Hey guys, and welcome to the Hoffington Post. You know who I am. I am Theodore Hoffman, and I am with an amazing entrepreneur. I met him at the NatWest Accelerator, and before actually doing this podcast, this show, I asked some more questions, in-depth questions, and there was a lot of things that I didn't know, which I'm really glad that I asked the questions now. But I'm going to leave him to introduce himself, and then we're going to get into some of the questions.
Yeah, hi guys. My name is Patrick. I'm the founder of a kombucha manufacturing company called PJ Kombucha. We've been going since 2016, incorporated the business 2017, and we've been producing authentic kombucha ever since.
Okay, amazing. So, how did you start in your entrepreneurial journey?
Yeah, so it's I think like it's kind of interesting. A bit of a long story, but so I'll try and keep it short. But basically, my background is in environmental science, and I had an awesome job in South Africa.
Yeah.
I basically was the camp manager, research technician for a camp over in Kruger National Park. So I'd mentor interns and volunteers and on master students and stuff like that, bring them out into the field, and we'd collect data on some of the cool animals out there, the elephants, the lions, and all that kind of jazz. Anyway, so I was out there for about a year and a half, and when I decided to leave, I went back to Australia, where my family was living at the time, and I came back with a skin infection. And I went to the doctors, and they gave me antibiotics, and it sort of died down, and then within a couple of weeks it came back, and this happened back and forth for a good just over 9 months, basically, to the point where I was on these intense antibiotics and like surgical scrub and all this kind of stuff. So I knew that my sort of gut microbiome was just banjaxed after all of that. So I went on a personal journey to try and sort it out. Found kombucha on the market in Australia at the time. The one that I tried was authentic. And it helped me at that time. So I looked into it in more detail, and I've kind of sort of organically grown into now a business here in Birmingham. So it was an interesting start and a massive life pivot, to be honest.
Yeah. Quality. So like the next question is like, I ask this question to every entrepreneur. It's more like, we all have problems in entrepreneurship, and we obviously solve them to get to that next level. Because Instagram and other platforms just show you the high life, the Lamborghinis, the money, all of that great stuff. But in reality, like you said earlier on, it's not sexy at all in the slightest. But it's because we have the passion and the drive to go for it. What problems have you came across, and the solution as well? So like, if you could give us a short story or just something that's happened that you feel like, you know what, this is what I overcome, just to show like the reality of your entrepreneurship journey.
Oh, bloody hell. To be honest, I don't actually know if there is any one particular story, because I feel like just owning and trying to run a business in itself is so difficult. I was very ignorant when I first started, and thought that when I was like, why doesn't everyone open a business? Like, I mean, it makes more sense. Like, you don't have to be doing 9 to 5 and blah, blah, blah. And all of that jazz. But the reality is that it's extremely bloody difficult, and it's like, especially when you're starting the business by yourself, you're wearing all the hats. And I think a lot of people say this all the time, but it is so true. I mean, especially for myself, it wasn't just that, like when I started the business, I was doing it literally Harry Potter style, under the kitchen, like under the stairs in my partner's mom's house. And I started with doing 100 litres, just testing to see what the story was, how they reacted as a climate here in the UK and all that kind of jazz. So the first difficult hurdle was moving from under the stairs into an actual manufacturing sort of area. Which, luckily I was able to get family and friends involved and invest in the business, and we were able to get a space. But it's every single day is a hurdle, because you're, from myself, I mean, I'm manufacturing the product, I'm trying to sell the product, I'm marketing the product, I'm bottling the product, you're doing it all yourself, and it can get very overwhelming. It's a mental mind fuck, to be honest with you. It's kind of, it literally is. I mean, you're there and you think. I found myself like almost thinking of two things at once, which I'm like, I didn't even know was possible, because I'm like running through so much in my head to try and keep track of things and everything like that. But I think I think that, like, I don't know, I think that's like the biggest thing. I mean, you know, when I first got into entrepreneurship, I always knew that the work was going to be hard, and that wasn't something that I was worried about. I knew that was a thing. You know, if, as you say here, I'm a grafter, I consider myself a hard worker, that was never a problem. It was the emotional side of shit that you just takes you, like, and you just, like, it just knocks you left. You know what I mean? And it's the constant ups and downs and the stress and the roller coaster. And it's, you know, I think that is also something that people say a lot, but and everyone, when you hear it, you're like, yeah, whatever, you know, but it is so true. It's like, it's something that you, as an entrepreneur, you really have to try and manage.
Oh, yeah. So what would you tell your 18-year-old self?
My 18-year-old self, bloody hell. Do you know, I've often thought about this, where, you know, I mean, like, back then, like, my passion was, and still is, like, my primary passion is the environment. It's you know, my animals, natural environments, working in that. You know, I was adamant. I went to university. I studied ecology and conservation biology, did my honors, worked in South Africa and stuff. And I do often think, like, and I have actually thought about this, like, would I go back and change it? Like, would I do like a business course or something like that? Like, would that help? Would it fast track this whole process? And I think it's like something that you said before. I don't think I would change it. Like, this experience has been so difficult, but I'd be like, you know, I've learned so much from it. Yeah. And I think you almost have to go through some of those hardships to be able to kind of make sure that you don't make those kind of mistakes again. Yeah. So for my 18-year-old self, I don't know. It wasn't something that at that time that I was thinking about doing in terms of going into entrepreneurship or starting a business and stuff. That wasn't really, it wasn't in my mindset. For me, it was, you know, going into and working in South Africa and, you know, working on the black rhinos and getting involved with the black rhino range expansion project with WWF and all this kind of stuff. You know, that's where my mind was then. And I don't know, it's really, I don't know. I don't think I would sort of...
Don't think you'd change?
I wouldn't change it. So I wouldn't say to myself, like, oh, go do a business course or anything. Because to be honest, I know a lot of, like, people who've gone to business courses and, like, their businesses fail. Do you know, it's like, it's like, I think you learn so much by doing it, you know, and I think you need that as well, because there's times when you think that you think better, you know better, but the reality is that, well, you don't, and you need to kind of learn that in certain aspects, like the market kind of determines whether or not something's going to survive, and like what we were saying before, you need to kind of adapt to those changes and stuff. And if you're sort of so focused on, like, sort of the theory behind, you know, running a business and what you think should work because that's what, you know, you've learned or something, then it might not work. So I don't think I'd change anything. I don't think I'd say, you know, don't do environmental stuff, go into business or anything like that. I think I'd say, like, just stick to the course and just, you know that this is going to be hell and you're going to be stressed out and you know, panic attacks almost and stuff, but it's okay.
Stick to the course.
Stick to it.
Especially with the passion that you've got for it and how it's helped you, most definitely. Yeah. So, like, what attributes do you feel make up an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I like that you asked this, because I thought about this before, and I say to everyone, I honestly say, like, and it's not a conventional answer, but it's literally, I think that entrepreneurs have to be, they're slightly insane and stubborn. Because I often think to myself, I'm like, who in their right bloody mind would do this? You know, who would go from, like, like we say it all the time, you know, a 40-hour week, 38-hour week, 9 to 5, getting, you know, paid consistently to getting paid fuck all and working 80 hours a week. Do you know what I mean? That's what you're doing. You know, you're literally, like, you're going into something and you're completely, like, working yourself, like, ragged almost at times. And, you know, I honestly think you have to be very stubborn. I feel like you need to kind of be, and I think that's me. I think that's why I'm saying it, because I'm a very stubborn person. When I decide something, I kind of have blinders and I'm like, this is it. Like, I have blinders on with this business. And I feel like, you know, and then you're just kind of insane, aren't you? Like, why would you do this? You know, I think it's just mental. And, like, but I do think, like, to be, in all honesty though, and jokes aside, you do need to be adaptable. I think, you know, it's just, I think it's just a necessity. You know, I think you know, you have your blinders on and you see where you want to go with the business, but if you want the business to survive, you're going to have to adapt because markets change all the time, people's decisions change, things grow and change, you know. So I think it's silly to think that, okay, my business is starting this way and then in 10 years time it's going to be the same, because it might be very unlikely. Like, you know, you're going to have to sort of make changes and make different decisions and stuff like that. So I think definitely being adaptable and being stubborn helps.
So can you give us like a moment where you've had to be adaptable, because once again we do need to change and pivot and do different things?
Well, I mean, again, like, you know, with I think I was telling you earlier, like with kombucha, you know, I was watching, I mean, as you do, I suppose, anyway, with any sort of business that you're in, you watch the markets and see what's going on, you know, and I was seeing, you know, other huge brands, international brands, sort of getting ready to enter the UK space. So we had these, you know, companies that were backed by PepsiCo, I was saying earlier, and stuff like that, and these other huge brands that entered, and I knew that it was going to happen. And knowing that I'm, you know, a sort of a single director business that's trying to do it all and wear all those hats and working mental, you know, how can I protect the business so that we're able to kind of get through it, you know? And in 2018, a brand came in and literally just took over the market. You know, they, you know, there's a company down in London that I know, I spoke to them, and they lost like 50% of the revenue in 2 months just from this other company coming in, because they came in, guerrilla marketing, here's 6 months worth of free product if you get it, take all the other kombucha off your shelf, you know. And it's, you lose hope because like there's a lot of sort of like business owners and stuff that, I mean, I'm not mad at them, I understand, you know, everyone needs revenue, everyone needs money, so, you know, that's a very appealing thing to happen to you. So I understand why they did it, but at the same time it's like, come on, like, you know, this is an international brand, your whole MO is like, you know, is, you know, we support UK businesses and local businesses, but I mean, that switches so much. So, you know, I learned that as well. That was a massive learning curve. All of that change, and with knowing that was coming in, I was saying earlier as well that we were, you know, I was thinking about how can we increase revenue faster, you know, without having to do huge amounts of marketing and sales and all that kind of jazz. So we started testing the marketplace for private labeling. So we adapted the business that way. We still have our brand, we're still selling our brand, but now we've kind of moved into the sort of private label space, which isn't somewhere where I thought I'd bring it, because a lot of people were saying to me like, oh, you're gonna, you know, create brands and they're gonna compete with your brand and blah blah blah. And like I was saying, I was like, well, someone's going to do it. They will. And it's like, either I'll tap into that to keep myself going and in a way indirectly sort of outcompete these huge brands that are coming in, and or I just struggle and trying to get by, you know, and potentially lose the business in the process, you know. So I think that was a massive sort of adaptation, sort of like, you know, people think, no, I won't do that because it's silly. We're going to be competing sort of directly with these other companies that we're producing for and stuff. But there's so many different areas in the marketplace that you position brands anyway, and different things. So, you know, like one of our brands that we have, they're not selling it as a premium authentic kombucha like we are. Like ours is a bit of a higher price because we put a lot more effort into it. We do the same for them, but they're putting it into a different space in the marketplace. You know, their branding is a lot different. It's a lot cheaper, if you will, like that. You know, there's other brands that we're doing, like we're doing a CBD kombucha, so that's completely different altogether from ours anyway. So, and there's different areas, like you were saying, like where are these people selling? Some of them are selling sort of in stores that we're selling in, but others are just selling in their own small areas that they want to sell it in, like their own storefronts and stuff like that. So, I mean, you know, you got to adapt.
For those that don't know what kombucha is, could you explain what it is?
Yeah. So kombucha is a fermented tea basically at its base, but I like to describe it as like a healthy soft drink because it doesn't taste anything like tea. It's not like a sweet tea. It's not like anything like that. It's actually comes out more of a sort of slightly tart, slightly sugary. So people understand what apple cider vinegar is. So it's basically similar to apple cider vinegar, but nowhere near as intense. Like it has that tartness, but it's more enjoyable. And the way that we produce it, we long age our drinks. So sort of we do a long ferment. So we will ferment our product for about 25 to 30 days roughly, which is quite a long time. But that allows us to control the fermentation process and allows the product to come out nice and clean and crisp, rather than like very acidic or very sugary, because you don't want either of those. You want this nice balance in between. You don't want it too sugary, you don't want it too like vinegary tasting or something like that. But with during the fermentation process, you get all of these natural live cultures that occur. You've got your beneficial yeast and bacteria, so it's good for your gut health and digestive system. You've got your antioxidants, your vitamins, your organic acids, your amino acids, and it's so cool because all of this just happens naturally through the fermentation process. So we don't do anything to it except sort of just put it on and nurture it, if you will, and then sort of 3-4 weeks later we've got like this awesome finished product that we just use sort of natural flavoring. So we'll do like our ginger and lime, for example. We use like cold pressed ginger juice and lime juice, and just put a fraction of that in to just give it a nice kind of boost of flavor. So all of our flavors have the same benefits, it's just the different flavors to it, basically.
So how do you keep up with the determination within your business?
I think that comes back to like that being that stubborn guy. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of like I have my blinders on, and like I always say to people, like I feel like cash and revenue is so essential for any business, especially in the manufacturing realm. It's needed because we need to buy in bulk stuff and whatever else. But apart from that, I think I always think like if there's a problem that I have and I'm having difficulty with it, I always think that there is an answer. I'm just not seeing it yet, So it's trying to find the best answer. And if I can't find it myself, I go and ask people, like, what do you think I should do here? Like, what's the best option? What's sorry, I lost my train of thought. What was the question?
So the question was, how do you remain determined?
Oh yeah. So I think it comes back to being stubborn, because I'm determined to run a successful business. That's my determination, and there's a lot involved in it. I mean, taking investment from family and friends is not an easy option. There's a lot of emotional baggage that comes with that money. Do you know what I mean? Because it's not so simple as someone that you don't know that's just invested. There's a massive disconnect between that kind of investment and investment from family and friends. So that's why I said to you earlier, I was like, anyone who comes on board, I'm like, if you give me money, just expect it to be gone. I was like, because I was like, I cannot, like, it doesn't matter. I say that and to try and help me as well. But there is still that emotional baggage that comes with it, because you're like, you cannot fucking lose these people's money. Do you know what I mean? They have invested this, and so there's that is a huge driving force as well. And just my determination to build that successful business that I want,
Can you delve into that a little bit more as well? Because I think people really think that, okay, you set up a business, you're going to make profit straight away. Where in reality, that doesn't work.
Fuck no.
So if you could dive in a little bit deeper into that, that would be amazing, because I think people really do need to listen to that.
I think it's like what we were saying earlier, like I like to say it as well, like business is not sexy. Like there is, like exactly like you said, people put, when you're marketing and stuff, you put on this sort of like this sort of overcoat of this is perfect and we're all happy and things are going so well, and then the back end you're like having a mental breakdown and like crying in the corner, basically. Do you know what I mean? And that's the reality of it. And it's funny because I've recently had someone come on board and he's a close friend of mine, and seeing how he reacted within the first week reminded me of where I was at the beginning and stuff, and just understanding that he went through, in a week's period, the ups and downs that I was talking about. He panicked, and then he was like, very excited, and then he panicked again, and he was very excited. And I'm like, that's something that you kind of like have to manage, because it is extremely exciting to start your own thing, but the reality of it is another story. You need to kind of like come into it with, okay, like you said, like almost, what is it that you want to do? Where do you want the business to go? And have you got the stubbornness and stamina to do it? And I think that's absolutely essential, and it's easy when things go right, it's easy like when like and those things can help you. You get massive highs when like, oh Jesus Christ, I got a new account, or like, yes, they put me on the shelf or something like that, or something positive happened. And then nothing for like another 2 months, and then you're questioning all again, and like you're like, Jesus, is it worth it? Blah 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 blah. You know, all of this kind of stuff goes through your head all the time, and it's hard. It's very difficult, you know. And it's funny actually. I was just thinking that I had a girl helping me as well with sales, and it was the first person that I had ever helping me in the business, and very competent person. She was amazing, so she was. But she came on board, and I was like, you know, she was helping me with sales. I was like, hey. Trained her, brought her out. She sort of shouted at me, and then I left her off herself. And she went out and she contacted 5 businesses, and she got all 5 businesses. And I was like, fuck yeah! And she was like, yeah, fuck yeah! And we were having this big like, yeah, this is awesome. But I was like, okay, but just the reality is that, you know, this is unusual. You know, this is not like you know. And she was with me for 3 months, and she never got another one again. But she was so disheartened, and she was like, oh my god, like this sucks, like what am I doing wrong? And I was like, it's not necessarily that you're doing anything wrong, it's just that, like, you know, timing, and you know, you might talk to someone and they're having a shit day and they're just not interested, you know. There's so many factors that influence sales in general, and from that regards, that, like, you know, there's so much that's out of your control. You know, you control what yourself and manage yourself and stuff, but you know, it's so difficult. There's so many things, and all of those no's as well. You know, like I said, someone who came on board as well recently with the business, they were like, you know, we did a week's worth of sales, and I was explaining, you know, be careful with like doing too many samples and stuff, sending out samples, because if you say in an email that like, oh, would you like samples, everyone says yes. They're like, yeah, absolutely, I want free shit. Do you know what I mean? So they're like, everyone will say yes. So I was like, we're not going to send samples to everyone because they're all going to say yes. So I was like, don't even say it. Just only say to the ones that you think are like very like, that you think they're a very good account to have, that they're perfect for the brand and the business and stuff, and sales would go well if we're with them and stuff. And but you know, it's all slow, and you know, patience actually is another one. And I don't have patience. I don't have patience and it's I think that's a learned thing. You know, it's
all the time.
100%. And it's like, you know, like I said earlier, that people, you know, like you said, you think that you go into a business and then it's just going to kick off and then that's rare and far between. It's a constant battle of just pushing through and pushing the business forward to where you want to go. And you know, it's patience is absolutely needed, because you need, things don't happen overnight, you know, I mean, like, at all. And it's the hardest thing to do, to sit back and be like, okay, let's wait till next week. You know, I mean, that's not what you want to do. You know, you want your business to like to strive as fast as possible. And so like sitting back and being like, okay, I will wait. You know, it's like when we talk to these new accounts and stuff, they take months to go through. Like, and then, you know, we might spend 3 months or 4 months on like speaking to them back and forth over the phone, emails, you know, Skype and Zoom and whatever else. And then last minute they just say no. And it's like all of that is like, you know what I mean? You get it and it's like, yay, you know, and it's like, you know, you got that high and you're like, yes, kind of thing. So I think, patience is something that you're gonna, if you don't have it, you're definitely gonna learn.
You're definitely gonna learn 110%. So,
I waffle a lot.
No, it's fine. Like, where do you see yourself in like 5 years' time?
It's interesting. It's always changing, to be fair, isn't it? I mean, like, you know, I've got like the picture of the business where I kind of want the business to go, and the main one is just to build a successul business, because that change, it has changed so much from when I started. So there's no point me thinking like, you know, yes, I want the business to be exactly like this, because it's, you know, it's always changing, like literally all the time. But I think, you know, there are certain sort of targets that I'd love to have and hit, and a few of them are just getting staff. You know, growing the business, hopefully like in 5 years time. I definitely, like in the next kind of like year or two, we're looking at expanding out into a much bigger facility, so looking for investment and stuff. You know, we're starting, although the business isn't in what you would say an ideal situation because of what's going on, you know, it still is growing. We still are getting interest in what we offer, and so I think now is the time for us to start sort of prepping for potential investors and stuff, and letting people know that, you know, we're open to having the right person come on board, so we can move out into a much better facility that will allow us to sort of cater for a lot more clients, kind of thing. Yeah.
So like, you know, when you mention like staff and getting and outsourcing work and so forth like that, being a leader, you need to be able to offload that work to someone else. And I know for myself, like I'm that guy to be like, oh, I'll do it myself, I'll do this myself. But in reality, in order to scale, you need to have people that are great.
100%.
So what makes a great leader, and what advice would you give to an entrepreneur to like let go and give to someone else?
It's so difficult, isn't it? Because that's the difficult part, isn't it? Is letting go.
Letting
Because you
go.
kind of like it's like, you know, it's 100%.
This is my baby. I don't want to do it.
And it's so true what you're saying. You kind of go like, you know, it's definitely you just kind of go like, oh, feck it, I'll just do it myself. Like you're taking too long, or you're not doing it right, or like, come on, you know.
Yeah.
But I think showing by example, to be fair, like showing, like, you know, training them properly, obviously, but like, you know, trying to pass on that passion and stuff that you have for the business, getting people involved that way, getting them as passionate about the business that you as you have, and leading by example, I think, is the best way, because, you know, people, what's the word? It's not really imitate, but they take on, you know, those
the
kind
copy,
of
the mirror.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So like if you have, like, if, for example, if you come to work every day miserable and like, oh, woe me and all this bullshit, like people are just gonna be like, oh, fuck's sake, I'm sick of this shit. Do you know? And they're not gonna work hard. They're not gonna be there. Whereas if you come in and you're like, yes, guys, like, let's go, let's do something. And like you pass on that passion and that drive, and you know, keep them involved, I think, is important. Keep them updated on where the business is and where it's going and what's happening. I think if you don't involve them, they become separated from the business, and I'm just an employee, so like, why do I care so much? Whereas if you actually get them involved, you let them know where it's all going, how it's going, how they have helped with whatever has happened, I think they'll be a lot more sort of integrated into it and be a bit more passionate about it, because I think that's a difficult thing. I mean, I don't have like staff per se, but like we have sort of like we do have contract staff that we help from just bottling and stuff, and it is, you know, and also allowing them to, once you teach them, allow them to teach other people, and you know, like, I mean, for us it's like just a bottling perspective. When we do our bottling runs and stuff, there's different machines and all that kind of stuff that we use, and we train the people on the machines, but then there's no harm if that person knows how to do it, to allow them to train someone else, because it makes them feel like, you know, they're adding value, and they're training other people, and they're showing that like what's done. It gets them a bit more involved, and have where they feel more part of it, which I think is good.
Yeah, definitely. We know being an entrepreneur is like a big mind fuck, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
But like, how is it that you can kind of work on the mental? Because obviously the business is a lot of physical, there's a lot of mental there, but how can you actually work on the mental, but also just find like personally who you are? Because it's a massive part of trying to disconnect that but still having love for both.
It is very true. It's a constant battle. I mean, like, you know, and for me personally, like my experience, like when I say I have like blinders, I tend to have blinders that are quite aggressive. So like, you know, before I went into the entrepreneur space, it was on my health and fitness, for example. And now I see that like my sort of health and fitness and mental state is suffering, especially this year. It's been very difficult because of COVID and everything, and just not knowing what the hell is going on. You know, having a lot of our independent stores shut down, you know, it's enormously stressful. So it's like, it's trying to kind of like, you know, for me, the biggest thing is actually having a physical separation. So like, you know, I used to work from home, which is never do it. Don't work from home. If anyone wants any advice, that's the biggest thing. It's like,
don't work from home.
Yeah, I can't separate. Like if I go home, if I'm working at home, I won't be able to sleep. I'll be thinking about it all the time, and that's what was happening to me. So having like being part of the NatWest program, going to the offices was massive. Now I work from like the unit itself at the manufacturing facility, and I leave my stuff there. Like I leave my laptop, I leave everything there, and I go home and I don't think about it. And that's the biggest thing that helps me try to separate it. And like, But even then, as an entrepreneur, as you know yourself, you never switch
never
off.
switch
I mean,
off.
I'll be watching a movie and then I'd find myself in a half an hour, like into the movie, like not knowing what the hell went on with the movie because I'm just thinking about what the fuck is going on with the business
literally.
and like where to go with it. And it's like, stop thinking about it, you know? So it's a constant learning curve. People, you know, I know like exercising helps me, and I have massively struggled with that this year. I have not exercised, I think, at all because it's almost like for me it's like one or the other. I find it's kind of like it's the mental stamina needed to keep up with the decision making and the changes involved in the business and trying to keep it going impacts my stamina to try and just lift a weight. You know, you need a different type of mental sort of stamina for that as well, you know, because you have to push through that too. You have to push through a jog. You need to force yourself to go. You know, it's not enjoyable to a degree. You enjoy it afterwards because all the endorphins and stuff are during it. You're like, you know, like fuck's sake. So like I found that this year in particular, I've struggled with that. So I don't think it's been a great year for me mentally. It's been a struggle, but it's, as I'm sure it would be for so many other businesses out there, because everyone is just like, what the fuck is happening? You know, so it's a constant battle, you know, and it's trying to, the biggest thing for me is catching myself is being, okay, no, like, you know, mentally being like, stop, you need to stop because you're being your worst enemy right now. And so you know, just trying to be, if nothing else, that's what I try to do, and just be like, okay, look, just take a break, go for a walk, you know, separate myself again somehow, you know, anyway, just to switch off for a second. Because, you know, you need the stamina, you need to be able to like keep up with the business if you want it to succeed as well, because you need to, you're the only driving force in the business.
100%.
And it's a massive deal, you know, and it's like, you know, I think that might be something that people struggle with when they first start a business, is that you might think that it just happens, and it doesn't just happen. You need to make it happen. No one else cares about your business. No one. And it's the hardest thing to come to terms with. Because you're so passionate about it, and you like, you know, people always say to me, oh my God, you're so passionate about it. And it gets people excited. I'm very good at talking, obviously. So I'm good at getting people excited about the business. But there's a massive difference between getting someone excited about it and actually buying something. Yeah, definitely. You know, and it's like, and I think it's you need to be the driving force, because no one else is going to be. And it is a big thing. Like, no one cares about it. Your partner doesn't give a shit.
No one.
Your parents don't give a shit. Even people who invest don't give a shit, like as much as you. Like they want, it's all on you to kind of push your business through and to get through it. And that's a huge thing to do. It's not a small feat, you know. And I think, you know, people think like, oh, I'm just selling spoons or something. Like, it's not that big of a deal. But it's like, well, you just invested like all this money, all this time. You know, you need to go out and sell it. You need to go and market it. It doesn't matter what it is. It's you and your effort that you put in is going to make the difference. Like, you know. And so, like for myself, as an example, you know, that was one of the reasons why I was thinking about the private label side of stuff, because I was like, this is a huge struggle for me. Like, I'm finding it very difficult to, you know, like I said, I'm producing it, I'm bottling it, I'm packaging it, I'm trying to sell it, trying to market it. I'm picking up the phone, I'm doing emails, I'm going out into the field, to try and sell the product. And being a one-man band, it's extremely slow. You know, it's a slow organic growth, but it was almost too slow. And I was like, okay, how can I just pick this up? Where can I cut something? You know, and sales and marketing is fucking an enormous amount of time and effort and money, you know, in a business, and it's such a huge aspect of it. And I was like, okay, well, private labeling might cut all of that out. All we have to do is like manufacture it and send it off to the people, and they worry about selling and marketing, you know. And it's like brilliant. So that has helped, and it's like that's where that kind of being adaptable and thinking about it, and just trying to push through, you know, because you're the person, you're like, at this point you are the business. And I to be fair, it's a funny thing, maybe it's a stupid thing to say, but I sometimes think that I don't really own a business yet, because if I stop, the business stops. So it's not really. When I have staff and I have people who I can get, when I can go on holiday and have a break, and the business is still going and I'm not having to stress out about it, then I'll be like, I'm a business owner now. I feel like now, you know, whereas before, you know, we're in a better position now, but before I was like what was it? I was, you know, the worst paid. No, I wasn't. I was just a volunteer in the business, essentially. I'm like, you know, I'm basically
volunteering your time to make
exactly
sure it works.
to push it through. And like there was years when I wasn't paying myself. You know, which is something that I think every entrepreneur kind of does, especially at the beginning. And I was in a very lucky position, lucky and very difficult position, where we were living with my partner's mom at the time. You know, so we were with her for like 2 years, 2.5 years, I think, almost 3 years we Jesus. But like, I mean, that's the reality. Yeah, that's the reality. It's like, I wasn't paying myself. Everything was being reinvested into the business. And we were living at home for years, and it's like, that is so hard as well, because there's so much like social stigma. You know, when you have people who they don't understand business, if they have never worked in business or has tried to start something themselves, you know, the typical social structure that people try and put you through is, you know, you go to school, you go to college, you get a job, you get a house, you get kids, you have a dog, you know, all of this. And it's like, and you break that mold, people are like, what are you doing? I don't understand you.
Literally.
And so then they're like, you know, for years I felt that, like, you know, people were judging me, thinking that, like, you know, oh, he's just mooching off, trying to like, and just, you know, living somewhere. We were paying rent, but like living somewhere, but like, you know, just not doing anything. And I'm like, I am. How the fuck do you think I'm not doing anything? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I'm almost in tears at times because you're trying to push through it.
I felt the exact same feeling, like, on many different occasions.
And it's difficult. I mean, it's funny because I love sort of analyzing people. I don't know, it's one of them when I'm bored, I suppose. But like, I love going to places with my partner, and like, you know, he has a job, and it's very simple for people to understand. So people would be like, you know, there'll be like an hour conversation about like him and his job and how it's going, and all these dickhead managers and there's bloody customers and they're doing my head in, and it's like, oh, Paddy, how are you going? And I'm like, yeah, I'm good. And then, oh, okay, cool. And then it's move on. Like before, it was like I would expand on that. And I just see them glaze over and just be like, okay, there's nothing. There's almost no point kind of doing it. And that's isolating as well, you know. And that's what I mean. Like,
now you mention it now, like,
it's your business. You're doing it yourself. No one else understands. And even socially, when you try and explain to people, like, no one fucking gets it. And that's when we talk about that emotional stress, that emotional side of things is huge, and something that people don't really take on board. And it's only other entrepreneurs. That's why, like, talking about this, I think, is brilliant. That's why I was like, I think this is perfect. I'm happy to have my time.
What you just said then, I actually realized it now as well. Like, some people are like, oh, how are you doing? Oh, yeah, doing business. And then just because they don't understand it, they just they go straight over it. But if you're talking about like working a job and managers and X, Y, Z, the conversation goes on forever. And I've had those type of, not necessarily being able to actually even contribute to those conversations, because I just don't operate and think like that, because I am the boss of my company and pushing that forward. But it's just funny that you said that, because it just fully resonated to be fair. And I didn't realize how, looking back at it, how the conversations were so different.
100%. I go out, like, there's times when I'm like, I don't really want to go out, because I'm like, I know that
no one's not going to understand me.
And I know that I'm just going to be sitting there, like, just not talking about anything or doing anything, or not being able to relate to a degree, depending on what it is, or people just aren't interested. So it's kind of like, you know, that's why I was saying having these conversations, doing stuff like this is so great. Having the NatWest program is fantastic, because you have that cohort of entrepreneurs. You can only talk to other entrepreneurs. It is the only thing. No one understands, and it's nothing ignorant about it. I'm not being mean, or I'm not being judgy. It's just the fact of the matter, and it's okay. It's fine. Like, you know, I don't care. Like, I understand why, and I don't feel better than anyone. That's not where I'm coming with this. It's just having that understanding so that you can be okay with what, like, it's so that you don't, like, if you're in that situation, like you thought about now, and you don't understand that this is what's happening, and it's not that there's any malice or that they're not interested or anything like that. It's just that they don't understand, so they can't relate. If you understand that, then you can kind of be like, okay, it's okay, instead of, why don't they care? What's going on? Like, I mean, I'm trying so hard. Like, I'm passionate. What the fuck? Ask me questions about my business. Like, you know, because we love talking about it. You know, literally. It gets us. That's one of the things.
I think, actually, genuinely, this conversation actually has been a breakthrough for myself, because I've realised I genuinely can't have conversations with a lot of people because they just don't understand where I'm coming from.
No.
And then sometimes I feel like I just don't go out anymore because people just fully don't understand my circumstance.
Yeah.
Where everyone else understands each other's circumstance because they either work or something like along the same nature as each other.
Exactly.
Yeah. And literally, breakthrough moment. I realised I realised why I'm so lonely.
That's it. Like, and but it's if you understand it, then there isn't a there isn't that sort of negative mindset to it. If you can understand something, you can rationalize it and you can think about it and be like, that's okay. Yeah. It's nothing bad. There is no malice behind it. It's not that they don't care. It's just that they just can't relate, and that's fine. That's okay. Fine. You know, so like now, before I really sort of understood that that's where it was coming, it was something that I thought about, like why don't people care? Like, what the fuck? You know, like, I'm struggling here. Hello. You know, it's like, I'm trying to get this business off the ground. You know, I'm almost in tears there, being like, someone asked me a fucking question. You know,
I fully get you. Fully get you. Like, I genuinely didn't really look at that perspective, and now you fully open my eyes to it fully.
And it's okay now. Now I'm like, that's fine, and I'm like, I'm happy. Let's have a chat. Let's just talk some shit. Yeah. You know, how's your dog? You know. So I was like, bye, whatever. And it's almost cathartic as well. I mean, because you don't really like, you know, there's times when you don't like, you know. We want nothing more than to talk about our businesses. But there's times when it's a good thing not to. Talk some shit. Stop thinking about it. Do you know what I mean? It's healthy.
Yeah, definitely. That's why we have these conversations, because it definitely brings the reality to the forefront, and it opens up your mind to loads of different things.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to an entrepreneur that wants to start business?
Oh, yeah.
Take your time.
Yeah.
No stress.
It depends on the business. So first off, I mean, if I'm in a product retail space, so from that perspective, I'm like, you know, don't manufacture it yourself. Find someone to manufacture for you. If you can find someone that can manufacture the product that you want, how you want it, the way that you want, and all that kind of stuff, it's a much better position to put yourself in, because it does the opposite from where I'm at now. It does that. Okay, I can focus on sales and marketing, and they can do the manufacturing and production. It cuts that out, and it's an enormous amount of money to put into the business. It's an enormous amount of time and effort. I only started paying myself like last year, just before all this crazy shit happened. You know what I mean? So in like now 4 years of business, it's only in the last year that I've been able to sort of pay myself anything, and it's not consistent. It's you know, it's not like a great salary. It's still something very basic just to help me get by. But yeah, so from that perspective, and it is something like, I mean, there's other, I think as an entrepreneur's mind, like, I mean, for myself, I have other businesses I want to start as well that I am looking into. But for those ones, it's very different to PJ Kombucha. The struggle came because you have to invest not only your time and effort, but you have to put your money into equipment. And, you know, you need to kind of like, oh God, sorry, my leg's gone dead. You need to like, you know, there's, like we said, the sales and marketing is a lot of time and effort as well, and money. And if you can kind of like, okay, find someone who can do the product for you, then good, you know, do it, you know, and that's what we're looking at for other products that we're wanting to develop. I'm like, I'm not doing this again. Like, this is, you know, it's going to be a long time before we see a significant return, but it's, you know, if it's for our perspective, now that we've pivoted, if we're able to sort of keep that sort of trajectory, bringing out some new products and keeping up with the private label side of things, it puts the business into a completely different sort of space where I initially was thinking about putting it. You know, because I have talks with people, and like they were saying, oh no, focus on your brand, because your brand is the thing that you can sell the best and stuff. And it is true, you can, absolutely, but it's extremely difficult to create, you know, a personality behind a brand, to create the right branding for it, to push that through, you know, in such an overcrowded, noisy space. Retail is crazy noisy, like, you know, and it's extremely difficult, you know, and it's always changing, and you're always going to have difficulties. But what was my advice be? So from a retail perspective, if you wanted to start, you know, and another big one as well is stop being a perfectionist. I've actually, like, I am the biggest perfectionist you will ever fucking find. Ask Pam, ask anyone in the entrepreneur, any of the mentors in the entrepreneurs thing. Like, that was my biggest hurdle, was that, like, I would, my thing is, if I focus on the small things, the bigger picture will come together.
Yeah.
And I still believe it, but it's like, I need to just calm down. If it was regarding like anything, like my sort of 80% is someone else's 100%. The way that people sort of perceive or see things is very different to me. So there's no point me sort of focusing so intently on something when the market is going to tell me that they don't like it anyway, because I've just wasted 6 months of my time, like, focusing on this tiny thing that the market doesn't even like anyway. And you're going to have to change it. So it's kind of like, it's more about getting your product or your service out there as soon as possible. Don't overthink it. Allow the marketplace to tell you what it is that they're looking for along what you're wanting to offer, because otherwise you're just going to struggle forever, basically. And it's not that you can't get it through, but it's like, if the market's not there, you don't have a business, because no one is going to buy it. You can't necessarily create it, create that space, unless it's like, something like, you can obviously, but unless it's something like, it's very difficult. Like, you have your unicorn businesses like Twitter and stuff like that, or and Facebook and stuff. They created a new platform. And it can be done, but it's extremely difficult and hard. And like, those guys had their own sort of very specific niche skills that allowed that to happen. The timing was right. There's so much more than just what you think is a good product that impacts and influences your business success. It is so much to do with like luck and sort timing. And timing, and just stamina. Like, it's so funny because when you look at like the entrepreneurs, the NatWest program, I remember what I was saying to you, like, I started on it back in 2017. And back then it was like stage one. I think a lot of people would get in depending on, like, they went through the application process and the interview. And I remember the first time I started, there was probably about like 85 to 90 people in the room. So there was roughly, you could say, about 85 to 90 businesses. And at that time they had stages. So you went through stage one, where it was like you build on the idea that you have to create the business. And stage two was you activate it, you start doing something. But I was there for 9 months and I was the last person left from like, I think anyway, from like from that whole group that started with me. And I was the only one left there, I'm pretty sure. Everyone else they just dropped like flies, and it's like, it is so much like, to do with timing, like with kombucha. Like 2016 was a time where there was kombucha on the market, but it wasn't huge yet. People in the UK didn't really know about it. So I kind of started at a time when it was good. I didn't have a lot of competition, and I didn't have, we still had to educate the market. And then, by the time we had all of these competitors, huge competitors coming to the marketplace, we already had the equipment which allowed us to pivot into doing private labeling. So it was good timing and luck that we were in a position to be able to offer that. And adaptability for myself, being like, okay, it's okay, right? I need to change the business if I want it to survive, instead of just putting my hands up and saying, fuck it, like I have no control over this. These people have so much money, woe me, kind of thing. It's like, okay, no, let's adapt it. Let's create a successful business. Let's try and keep it going. And how can we do that? What is it I'm not seeing? Where can I move things around and change things? So I think there's a lot of that as well needed.
So how can the audience, the listeners and the viewers reach out to you, buy kombucha? We have our website. So at the moment, probably the best place to do to sort of buy is on pjkombucha.com. So you can find us on there. We are on Instagram. It's at pj.kombucha. Those are probably the two best platforms. You can always, if you have any questions or want to buy, you can buy in there. You can email us, contact us any which way you want. No problem. It's a pleasure having you on.
Thanks.
And you definitely enlightened me on some things now, definitely.
I hope it helps.
But it's genuinely a pleasure having you on here. Viewers and listeners, I want to say thank you very much for watching and listening. I'd highly recommend you liking this and actually sharing it with a friend, an entrepreneur that's actually going through the motions or thinking about starting their own thing. And I highly recommend also watching this back and listening to it back, because there's definitely going to be some nuggets throughout this whole podcast that's going to resonate with you. And then the more repetition of actually listening to something, the more that it actually sticks. But I just want to say thank you very much for listening, and I'll see you on the next show.